Here at Paddy Power, we're the home of the Money Back Special, with some incredible offers every single week. Check out the website or app today. Terms and conditions apply. 18 plus begambleaware.org.
Hello there and welcome to this Monday Review podcast. I'm Maddy, Playle. I'm joined this week by Bruce Millington and Darren Hughes from Paddy Power, and we're going to look back on the greatest week of sports at the Cheltenham Festival. We had some mesmerising performances, but then of course there is the coronavirus outbreak that we have to take into consideration. It's a dark cloud hanging over not just the sport but the whole world at the moment. More of that chat later on, but so far let's just have a look at the lads' standout performances, their favourite stories from this week. Bruce, we were just chatting before on air and it was a pretty good week for you overall.
Yeah, punting-wise a good week, but I mean more importantly as a racing fan, I just thought we were treated to 4 days of absolutely fantastic action. I thought the finishes were superb. What I really was pleased about was that some new horses came along that looked like potential stars and in some cases potential superstars as well. So it feels like the sort of pool of top class horses has been refreshed, and you know, when racing can resume, hopefully by this time next year, the coronavirus horrors will be behind us and we can look forward to another fantastic 4 days. I mean, I must say, Maddy, kind of since the festival, you kind of think back and you think, do you think we'll look back in 2 or 3 weeks' time and think, how the hell did they actually let that run? But, you know, it was great news that from a sporting perspective that we were able to enjoy it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was superb. And I thought Cheltenham put on a great show. I thought Simon Clace did a wonderful job of the ground. Yeah, it was just, you know, pretty much about as perfect as a Cheltenham Festival can be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. For me, I know we had the odd shock. It wouldn't be the Cheltenham Festival without it. Listnagar Oscar winning was probably one of those. But I thought a lot of the results made sense, and if there can be a right horse winning, that seemed to happen. As you say, we got some fantastic performances. Just pick out a favourite or two from you. I mean, what really struck you from this year's festival?
Well, I thought on that Thursday there were two just unbelievable finishes, weren't there? In the Marsh. I thought Sam Crow versus Faheen versus Mellon was just absolutely awesome. I thought that was just such a brilliant race. And then Min winning the Ryanair. They were really exciting finishes. The Gold Cup itself was absolutely astonishing. Honeysuckle beating Benny Dejeu. It was just, you know, wherever you look, there were just amazing things happening. I mean, the moment of the week was obviously Goshen coming down there, and it was awful, and you know, the image of poor old Jamie Moore and the connections absolutely devastated, and Jamie so honest and you know, it did unnecessarily apologetic on social media afterwards. Although that was a really, really heartbreaking thing to happen, just look how much Goshen's reputation has soared after that now. And when the dust has settled and they've got over the disappointment there, the excitement they must have at this horse who you know, they're talking about running him on the flat with Ryan riding him. Obviously next year's Champion Hurdle's a target. This is a horse who I think in 2 or 3 years' time is going to be one of the most loved, you know, exciting horses we've had. So I can't wait to see what he does. And, you know, obviously in 2021's a long time away, but wouldn't you just love him to come storming up the hill in the Champion Hurdle? And Jamie Moore to come in with a big beam on his face rather than, you know, the forlorn look that he wore on Friday.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think as well as the brilliant horses, there are a lot of different moments in this year's festival that will have really grabbed people. That was one of them. The ride on Benny Dejeu, well, that caused a big stir, and various other things, even Album Photo and the sort of vibes around him and the route he's taken to win the Gold Cup, a second win in the Gold Cup. That's an absolutely, you know, historic feat from him. Darren, let's go over to you. I mean, your highlight personally from the week?
I was glad to see Envo Allen live up to the hype. I really was.
It's a shame Tom Siegel isn't on today's show, because you could give it out about him, couldn't you?
When I saw he wasn't on, I was disgusted. Yeah, I was going to give him both barrels, but I'll see Tom again. Don't worry about that. No, look, that was a massive highlight. I think the novice hurdlers in general are absolutely red hot at the minute. I think what Bruce said there is correct. We're in for a treat over the next 4 or 5, 6 years. I really think that there's a special crop after coming through there. I mean, like, you start with Shishkin, Abacadabras. I think Abacadabras could win the Champion Hurdle next year. You go then to Envo Allen, the big breakaway, even easy work there. I think the Albert Bartlett was one of the best Albert Bartletts of the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, I'm really, really, really taken by the week that was in it. thought it was a brilliant week to race, and I loved seeing Sam Crow get his retribution as well after, a difficult season and a half or 2 seasons. So yeah, look, come out really, really positive. I thought it was a brilliant week.
Yep, and just a reminder, if you're suffering from the Cheltenham come down, as we all are to an extent, there's loads of content on our website at the minute. Our best tipsters have picked out their best bets for next year. We've had an interview with Jamie Moore after that incident with Goshen, and lots more. So keep your eyes peeled on racingpost.com. Let's go through the 4 championship races then. The Champion Hurdle being one of those, and everyone was keen to take on Ante-Post in the run-up to the race, but her class came through. It was a really cosy win. She seemed to motor away from the field after the final flight. Bruce, were you surprised that she managed to do it in that manner, or was that what you were expecting?
Not really. No, I mean, I wasn't overwhelmed. It's she's put last year's poor round of jumping in the mares' novices behind her. And Nikki's got her absolutely perfectly prepared for it. I still think that both Honeysuckle and Benny Dejure would have beaten her. I don't think it's vintage champion order. I'm just trying to use Sharjah as a gauge though, because on the one hand, this horse came cruising and looked like it was going to win it on ground that, if it was given a soft, if it was anything, it was soft to heavy rather than good to soft. He's meant not to like that. So that kind of raises a red flag over the quality of the race to an extent. But also I've looked back on Sharjah today. It might actually be that it just slightly coincidental that some of his worst runs have been on soft and heavy ground. He has got some decent form there. So it's possible he has done his running. But whichever way you slice and dice the form there, Maddy, I don't think that's a great champion hurdle by any means.
Could different of horses finished second and third to make you think it was a good champion hurdle, or do you just think as a bunch they're nothing outstanding?
Not really, because I mean, they finished kind of 2 lengths between first, second, third, fourth. So I don't know. She's done it as well as she possibly could have, but I just don't feel like it was a great champion hurdle. So I wouldn't be. I mean, she's favourite next year because the bookie's got to make something favourite. I would love to see the Honeysuckle team say, well, look, Kenny Alexander was desperate to win a Cheltenham race this year. He did that, and I'd like to see her come down and go for the champion next year. But I think she's one of these mares who's going to be a bit of a sort of a kind of deluxe vroom vroom mag, in that she'll probably be able to run in any one of about 10 races next year. If I was looking at the champion hurdle winner next year, I wouldn't look beyond Goshen. I just think that this horse is really special. And I know 5-year-olds have a terrible record, but the winner was 5 this year. So to me, he's outstanding, and I think you can get 8 to 1. It's a long time, isn't it? 12 months. I wouldn't say that's bad value at all, because I think if he had stood up, and don't forget, it was such a freak that brought him down. The back horse was getting caught in the front one. I think if he had gone on to do what he would have done, which is power home by 15 lengths, I think he would be even shorter. So for me, he should be favourite. Envoy Allen, I mean, Darren, you said that, you loved seeing him confirm his promise. I thought it was a good run, but it didn't scream champion hurdler to me. I mean, I don't know. Maddy, I'm going to turn the tables on you, because I'm normally in that seat asking the question. If you were betting on the champion hurdle now, who would you back?
I'm not sure. It's a tough one. I like where you're going with Goshen, because he did have that total wow factor, didn't he? But at the same time, Ante-Post, and this is something that I think could change in the coming years. I'll be interested to get your thoughts on it. £7 for mares in open company. With the division thriving at the minute, I mean, you look at Annie Power, Vroom Vroom Mag, all these Benny Dejure, all these excellent mares. Do you think that £7 is going to need changing, Bruce?
Possibly. I mean, I would need, it would need people who spend longer than I do examining the minutiae of the form, but I mean, it does feel like it's on the generous side, if anything, doesn't it? So I don't know. I mean, Darren, what did you think? Because you're an Envoy Adam fan. Where would he go next, do you think? Would he jump the big fences now?
Oh, he has to surely jump the fences. That's what they bought him for. But I don't think they bought him to be a champion hurdler. And I think as well, when they have Abracadabras there, he looks to me like the perfect model of a 2-mile hurdler. I wouldn't see any reason to run them against each other in a champion hurdle. This lad is getting on as well. You have to remember he's already 6, so he'd be rising 7 going novice chasing. I mean, you can't really piss around and waste time going down the champion hurdle if you've bought him to win a Gold Cup. for all I do think he could be thereabouts in a champion hurdle. No, I'd say Chase will be his game going forward.
And we have to look at Shishkin as well. I mean, he won the race. He was fantastic, wasn't he? Peculiar old drift.
Arkle seems to be the plan for him. I've heard a lot of people say, I know Paul Keeley thinks he'll make him into an Arkle horse, Shishkin.
I'd be shocked.
Yeah, that's I think that Supreme's decent, though. I really do. I think that was full of good horses. Yeah. And I'm really excited to see how things shape up next season.
Yeah, as we all are. Darren, just before we move on, just roll us through your champion hurdle betting for next year.
Can do, yeah. Epatante heads are market there at 4-1 from 5s. And Violet, interestingly enough, has been clipped to 6-1 from 10s. So somebody obviously thinks he might be going hurdling next year. Goshen is also 6-1. Abacadabras is 8-1 from 10s. Honeysuckle is 10s. Shishkin is 16s, and it's 20s and bigger after that.
And just confirm, if we sort of forced you, who would you be looking at for next year's champion?
Abacadabras, definitely. I think he was very, very unlucky in the Supreme, in the sense that he was taken into the race a little bit too early. It wasn't even Davy Russell's fault. It's just the way things happen in front of him. And I think there's a possibility he might have come out on top, because he just seemed to stop once he hit the front. He's a bit of an awkward type. He's your perennial 2-mile hurdler. It's written all over him. I think he's a monster, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't look the easiest of rides, does he? Let's move on then to the Champion Chase. Now, this race, it was just an absolute killer when we found out that Chacun Pour Soi wasn't going to be running, Bruce. We were in the Arkle bar having a quick drink, and it was just... You can almost feel the atmosphere go out of the racecourse, because so many people were anticipating this big clash. Altior had already gone, and it paved the way for Politolog to gain an unlikely victory. How do you summarise the race now?
It was peculiar, that moment, wasn't it? Awful moment. We were, as you say, we're down in the Arkle bar. You were on your third Guinness. I was having a tonic water, being the pro I am. And there was no announcement, was there? We just looked on the screens and it said non-runners, Altior and Chacun Pour Soi. Like, really? Look, I mean, the race obviously fell us apart absolutely spectacularly. I think Politolog's a really, really decent old chaser, and so it's nice that he got his day in the sun. Obviously, Defy's the one of the big three who actually lined up, but may as well not have. I mean, it was awful to see him. It was like he was running through treacle, wasn't he? So if you look at next year's betting, I think the big three from this year are still the front three, so we might have to get the clash 1 year on. I guess the fact that Altior's going to be 11, Defy's left his run behind there, it's going to make Chacun the obvious favourite, I would have thought. I mean, he almost certainly would have won, wouldn't he? So, look, I mean, again, there were plenty of races that thrilled us and gave us possibly more than we were entitled to expect. The first two we've talked about, the Champion Hurdle and particularly the Champion Chase, were slightly the opposite. Great training performance by the brilliant Paul Nicholls for Politolog to win it. But, in terms of how we look at the 2-mile Champion Chase scene next year, A, that race isn't going to be necessarily that relevant. And B, I'm not sure how strong the Racing Post Arkle is. Put the kettle on, lovely winner, great little mare, but is she going to turn up? Is she the next kind of 2-mile titan? I have my doubts.
Yeah, I'm not sure you'd be the only one having doubts about Put the Kettle On. Politolog, I think it was a great training performance, as you've touched on. Paul Nicholls has explained, he bled after the Tingle Creek and he trains him completely differently now. For me, the story out of this was just Paul Nicholls' brilliance and Harry Skelton, a really lovely, positive ride. It was almost as if the writing was on the wall from sort of the beginning of the race. I'm not sure why Defy didn't run up to potential. It doesn't seem like anything has come to light. Darren,
the stable form was bad all week, really, apart from the very last race. I mean, there's a lot of stables. There's a lot of big name trainers who will not have had the most enjoyable weekend. Hobbs' one, Tizard's another, because apart from Lost in Translation, he didn't have a lot to smile about. So, everyone fixates about stable form possibly more than they need to. But I think in this situation, Sporting John had already run really badly as well. He just didn't do his running. I mean, there's no kind of, it's not down to tactics. Dawes just had a bad, he had a bad day for whatever reason. So, the real Defy, it's perfectly possible we'll see him again, and we look forward to that. But that wasn't the real Defy, was it?
No, definitely wasn't. Darren, Defy de Soy, what were your thoughts on him? What price can we get him about for next year? That'll be interesting.
I'll give you the full rundown of the betting. Here's the handiest thing. Bruce is correct. Cheltenham Festival does head our market at 6-1. Altior is 8. Factor to Dairies is 14s from 25s. Definitely Decide then is 14s. Put the Kettle on the Arkle winner is 20s. Bloodlog is 20s. Dynamite Dollars is 33-1, and it is 40s bar.
Okay, and what did you take from this year's race? Did you just sort of think, I'll sort of put that to one side?
I think Duffy ran below himself. I think that's you can't argue that point. But I also think he might have been a little bit overrated coming into the race. I mean, like, what had he done this year? He beaten Undeso twice effectively, like, and who ended up having to be retired this year because he obviously got injured. He wasn't himself all year. I'm saying he definitely ran below himself. I'm not claiming that was a run to form, but like, you have to bear in mind he only beat Little Lag a length, getting 3 pounds off him earlier on in the year. So while again, I repeat, he has run below himself here. Was he really? Did he deserve to be held in the same sort of level as Altior and Shackleton Saw heading into the race? I know it's easy to say that afterwards, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure he's up to the same level. Certainly over 2 miles as the other two.
That's interesting. I don't necessarily think I agree with you there. I think that's a bit harsh. But anyway, let's look at the horses coming
Maddy,
through.
Just one quick one, Maddy. There on the championship.
Yep.
What price is Melon, Darren?
Melon is not priced up at the minute, Bruce, but I can get him added in for you.
I wouldn't say it's impossible that they could yank him back down. I mean, he ran a cracker. He loves Cheltenham. He's been second in 2 champion hurdles. I guess you'd need something to happen to Shaka, wouldn't you? But I don't know. I think Melon's he's just this incredible Cheltenham machine, isn't he? And I guess they'll probably stick into Ryanair kind of trips. But I just wonder whether maybe the cards could fall in such a way that you could have a silly bet on Mellon at a huge price and maybe just see him line up and run really well.
Yeah,
okay.
He is 20-1 for the Ryanair at the moment, but I got him added into the Champion Chase market as well.
Okay.
It could be interesting.
Yeah, it could be. As you say, Bruce, that Marsh chase was unbelievable, wasn't it? Anyway, Stayers Hurdle time now, and I don't think anybody could have envisaged Lisnagar Oscar coming home in front, beating Ronald Pump and Bacardi's. What an extraordinary trio. Paisley Park came out with it with a defibrillating heart, I believe. Hopefully that'll be treated and we'll see him back to his best on a racecourse soon. But this was a very interesting race tactically because Apple's Jade just blew it apart from the moment the tapes rose, Bruce. And Lisnagar Oscar, he's always been a strong stayer. He was a good novice, but that came a little bit out of the blue, didn't it?
Completely out of the blue. I mean, I barely knew he was running until the commentator started calling him home after the last. You're right. Tactically, this was really interesting because Apple's Jade went on an incredible solo mission there. And
it was like a final hurrah, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but the jockeys were in a quandary there because she'd been punted as well, which might have suggested stable confidence. But notwithstanding that, the best of Apple's Jade is absolutely top notch. So the jockeys had to think to themselves, well, hang on, is this one of her good days or one of her bad days? Are they just going for it and they're expecting her to come back? They can't let her out of their sight. And therefore, a lot of them, I think, were out of their comfort zone a lot sooner than they should have been. I think with Paisley Park, I mean, okay, there may have been this heart issue that you touched upon there, but he just had an accumulation of small mishaps from the top of the hill down. He just didn't get a run. He kept getting... It was like if you're trying to run and someone's always just tugging your top back and just checking your momentum. And I think that doesn't explain how far he's got beat, but it certainly doesn't help. I found it obviously, like everyone, a very peculiar race. It looked like Ronald Pump was going to come and win the race, but the winner's done it really well. Rebecca Curtis has had a bit of a gap between her previous festival winner, but she used to churn these Cheltenham winners out, and so the whole kind of the Stay and Chase scene is up in the air now, isn't it? It's very interesting, and I wonder whether, for instance, if Willie Mullins sits down and reflects on it, would he? Because he said after the Gamble, he said, "Do you know what? That's got Stayers Hurdle written all over it for Benny Gagio." I just wonder if now he regrets not running her in that. But it was. I could have had 8 goes and not got the winner, and it will be interesting to see what that does in terms of the shake-up at the top of the Staying Hurdlers tree.
Yeah, just while we're talking about the 3 mile division, the Albert Bartlett, can you see any of them going on to be Stayers Hurdle horses next year?
with bells on. I mean, I think that, as Darren said earlier, I thought that was an excellent race. You know, it's funny because when you get a really close finish, sometimes we, as racing fans, we want to see something come out and absolutely dominate. But I think all those horses at the front four, I think Monkfish, obviously really gallant winner, latest exhibition, Fury Road and Time Hill were all excellent. And I actually think it's perfectly possible that those four will just muscle in. Some of them are going to go chasing, I guess. But, you know, the connections of all of those horses will say, well, look at this year's stayers. Didn't appear to take a lot of winning. Obviously, Paisley's going to come back and Paisley's probably still the king. But, you know, there's every chance that we can go in there and dominate. And so I think those four horses that fought out the finish of the Albert Bartlett are really, really good. And I think they're all going to be excellent. Who did you like best out of those, Darren? Because you touched on the Albert Bartlett earlier.
I thought Time Hill wasn't given the greatest ride, the greatest ride of all time by Richard Johnson. Not saying he did a whole pile wrong. Probably Monkfish, just given, I really don't think, I know he was 5-1, but the word about him coming out Willies is that he's still very kind of thin, he's still very gangly, he's a lot of grown up to do. And that at this stage in his career, they're not really expecting him to be able to win an Albert Bartlett. And, you know, he was bought to be a staying chaser. So I'd say he could be the one to take going forward. Obviously, he won the race. Pity that latest exhibition couldn't get up for Paul Nolan. That would have been a lovely story. Get it hard to split the front four, but probably Monkfish if I had to pick one.
They've said future Gold Cup horse about him, haven't they? Anyway, let's move on for the stay-in division. Lots to chew over there. And the Gold Cup, well, we've had a 2-time back-to-back Gold Cup winner. That's not something you see every day. We haven't seen it since Best Mate. Bruce, I'd be interested to get your thoughts because Lee Mottershead was on Look on Sunday yesterday and made the point about how he's not necessarily a public horse because he hasn't been given the opportunity to be one. And I must say, I was sort of managing a lot of our digital products on that Friday, and it did seem the analytics spoke that people weren't necessarily wanting to click about Album Photo and wanting to find out about him, which is bizarre because he's done something that not a lot of horses have done. Corto Star didn't do it. He couldn't win them back to back anyway. Denman didn't. Album Photo, I mean, maybe it's just because he's Irish and he's got a bigger following in Ireland, but you thought this was a monstrous performance. I mean, I'm sure we all did. Just talk to us from your perspective, how you see it.
I think probably there's three primary reasons. I think Lee's correct. As things stand, he's not a horse that everyone just falls in love with. One would be that his kind of back form isn't spectacular. So, in other words, if Envoy Allen ended up winning 2 Gold Cups, it would be on the back of a string of ones in his name. You know, he'd always have been the kind of prince and the heir apparent, and 2 Gold Cups would have just been the anointing of him. Album Photos come into it in a slightly less with less swagger. That's point one. 2, he's got a slightly sort of peculiar name that, you know, it doesn't really mean anything. It's a bit of a sort of mash-up of his Siren Dam's name, and I do think that counts. And 3, he's not campaigned in a way that we see a load of him. So, you know, as things stand, I mean, you know, you can't disrespect what he's done. It's absolutely fantastic. But I guess that's the reason why Lee made that point, and I'm inclined to agree with him. I mean, more pertinently, is he a 3-time Gold Cup winner? So you've got to look at what's going to be up against him next year. I mean, Santini was excellent. I mean, we've got to talk about the enigma that is Champ, because, I mean, that was just extraordinary, that RSA, wasn't it? It really was. And it was funny because I thought all the way around, I just thought that Barry Geraghty was just so desperate to get him from one side to the other at each fence. It was the most safe round of, or the safe way of presenting a horse at a fence I'd ever seen. And he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't soar over the fences, but he got over them. But then, once he's jumped the final one, that Rolls-Royce engine of his clicked into overdrive, and it was ridiculous what he did.
Or
really.
did the other 2 in front go for home too soon and soften each other up?
Well, possibly, but I mean, you look, the bottom line is I don't think they weren't doing a crisp, but I think they were staying on okay. But I think Champ is, just like I say, this extraordinarily fast staying chaser, and once he's on the flat there, he collared them. So he comes into the equation. What you're going to need if you want to back him for next year's Gold Cup is confirmation that he can jump, but also possibly that he can jump a bit faster, because, like I say, it was very safe. It was a remarkably safe run of jumping. There are no big mistakes, but I think to win a Gold Cup, you can't put a foot wrong, and that includes the fences. So you need to soar over them. So I think Champ's quite interesting. I mean, I think Santini ran a really, really good race. I think Santini was excellent. I think lost in translation, if you look at his interrupted preparation.
And how keen he was as well.
Top of the game's going to come back into it. I'll get Darren's thoughts, but come back to me because there's another horse at actually massive price. So
I will do. One thing I wanted to mention to you about Darren was, we hear from jockeys in the build-up. I've heard Ruby Walsh say it on a couple of things. He said every Gold Cup is an end-to-end gallop. They never stop. You never breathe. This year, to me, to my eyes, it didn't seem that way. I mean, we saw Real Steel, who, doubtless is a good horse, but I don't think anyone could have envisaged him tanking into a Gold Cup. You even look, I mean, the first 6, I think, were covered by about 8 lengths. So it was a bit of a funny race in that respect, wasn't it?
Yeah, that to me makes the winner even more impressive because he won a staying Gold Cup last year where he needed to show, the depths of his stamina. Whereas this year he took it up, 4 out, whatever it was, and kind of he was faster than the rest of them in getting home. So that makes him even more impressive. I take the point that he mightn't be a people's horse as yet, but I guarantee you he will be from here on out. I guarantee he goes to Punchestown this year, there are going to be people there to see him. Tremor next New Year's Day is going to be it's going to be the place to be next New Year's Day. It's going to be jammers because everyone's going to show up to see this horse run, and the same thing next year. I take the point he mightn't be a people's horse yet, but I guarantee you from this point onwards he definitely will be. This was monstrous. This was so good. As I said, he's shown how versatile he is in the sense that he obviously has the stamina to win a really grueling Gold Cup, but this year he won which required tactical speed. I think there's nothing to stop him going back and running very, very well in the third one, and hopefully even winning a third one again.
Yeah, he's a really interesting horse. As Bruce sort of pointed out, he's plucked from obscurity a little bit. Go on then, Bruce. Who was your other name? Oh, sorry, Darren.
No, sorry. I think what also hasn't helped him is the fact that he was a 12-1 poke in it last year. He didn't go into it. He's really only gone in with 1 year's worth of sort of public profile, if you get me. Whereas if he had gone into the Gold Cup last year, say 9-4-5, won it, came back in this year as 9-4-5 and won it, I think again he'd have a bigger profile off the back of that. Whereas last year he came in and people didn't really know he was even running the race till he crossed the line in front,
Yeah, I think as well you mentioned him being versatile. This year it was a lot quicker ground than we've seen for the last couple of years, and he still managed to just get the job done. That's what he seems to do. He just does it no matter what. Just personally, we all know I'm biased and we all know I love Lost in Translation, but I thought over the last couple of fences, those two duelling at it were really a sight to behold. And I think if he can settle down a bit, grow into his frame a bit more, he can maybe go a bit better. I'm not necessarily saying he can win one, but I thought that was an excellent performance given the yard form. Bruce, who did you want to mention?
Okay, so I thought this at the time, but then I thought, hang on a second, am I being silly? And then I read the double-page spread in the Racing Post today where the top experts put up their fancies for next year. And Tom Siegel, who was last by dint of alphabetical order, he pricked that thought from last week. Easy's Land. I mean, if Easy's Land hadn't run in the cross-country this year, Tiger Roll would have won it for the umpteenth time by 18 lengths, would be even shorter for the Grand National, and everyone would have said, wow, that was just, isn't it extraordinary? Easy's Land has absolutely slain Tiger Roll by 17 lengths as easily as you would like, and is a 6-year-old from France with obscure connections. But this horse clearly has something. And while, the cross-country isn't a known trial for the Gold Cup, this horse has clearly got phenomenal ability. And if he's 40-1, I believe, in a place. So, if you want a £5 or a couple of quid now to just, put away and hopefully it'll harvest next March, that's a really interesting horse there. I mean, Tiger, there's no reason to suspect Tiger Roll hasn't done his running. No one does that to Tiger Roll these days, but he did it. It was an amazing performance. It could completely blow out, but at 40-1, you can afford to just, like I say, have a couple of shekels and see what happens. But that was a remarkable performance. And just because it took place over the quirky cross-country course, I don't think that means we should kind of devalue it in any way.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I did mention that piece earlier. I think I said Paul Keeley fancied Shishkin for the Arkle. Someone else fancied Shishkin. Darren was right initially. Abacadabras for the champion hurdle was Paul's bet in that. I believe I put up Manila Indo for the Gold Cup because I thought it was really interesting that when Champ went by him, he actually seemed to run on again, which was a bit bizarre. But we'll see how they all work out. Darren, before we move on, just run us through your Gold Cup market.
Can do, Maddy, yeah. We are Album Photo 5-1 to retain his crown. Santini is 8-1 from 12. Manila Endo then is 14s from 20s. Champ is 14s. Lost in Translation is 14 from 25. Top of the Game 20 from 33s. Alaho 25s. Delta are 25s, and it's 50s and bigger the rest after that.
Okay, so now we've wrapped up the 4 big races. Let's just open this up for, say, 5 quick minutes and talk about Ante-Post selections for next year, or horses that you're looking forward to seeing where they run next. Gosh, and the big talking point, he's got to be one, hasn't he? That 4-year-old at Aintree, 4-year-old hurdle at Aintree has got his name written all over it. I would love to see him get redemption there. And Bruce, anything sort of stand out to you?
Well, I mean, first with Goshen, they're talking about flat races, aren't they? And yeah, I mean, this could be a Melbourne Cup horse. It's just there's no end to what he might win. I mean, the E-Ball has an enormous prize money these days, doesn't it? Look, I don't know, but I think it's going to be so exciting to see how he operates. I think Envoy Allen is obviously really interesting, where he's going to go, what he's going to do next.
What would you do with him?
Well, you go chase him, wouldn't you? And he looks to me not really like an Arkle horse, except that Arkle horses tend to need a bit more stamina than you'd expect from 2 miles. But I'd see him in the Marsh next year.
Totally agree.
He didn't blow me away, but he did it really well. Look, he's not just I don't think anyone who was opposing him, and boy was everyone looking to oppose him, all the Shrewdies, but that was just on price, and he got even shorter. He got 4-6, didn't he? He's really, really good, but I don't necessarily think he's the hottest property out there right now. What else? Well, I mean, the Mayor's Novices is interesting, isn't it? Because the winner, it won so far. Concertista. But the trouble is, everyone's gone, oh, well, this is the new Lorena who bolted up in the same race. She because Lorena's blown out, everyone's thinking she might. But if you didn't have the Lorena case study to work on, you'd be extremely excited about Concertista, wouldn't you? So there's a lot of horses come out of the festival right across all the divisions. And just listening to Darren reading out some of those Ante-Post prices, I'm just so excited for what could happen in the next 12 months for jump racing, because I just think we've got this unusually big infusion of potential stars. And, I just want to see how they go. I just think, jump racing is in such great health here.
Yeah, ironically. Yeah, it is, and I'm with you on that one. Darren, what about you? I mean, did you get on to anything straight after Cheltenham?
No, I generally don't. That's not to say if there's anything wrong with doing that. It's just it's not really my style of going about things. As I said earlier on, the one that really stands out for me, I think, is Abacadabras for the Champion Hurdle. I definitely respect Goshen, but I think 8-1 is more than fair. I'm going to wait for confirmation that they stay hurdling, because there is kind of half chat that he might go chasing. But to me, it's a no-brainer to stay hurdling. The other one then that just seemed to be too big of a price is in the Paddy Power Stairs Hurdle. Paisley Park is 10-1 to reclaim his crown. I think, look, if he did a leg, let's say the morning before the Stairs Hurdle didn't run, he definitely wouldn't be 10-1 for the race. And I'm happy just to write off that performance as a freak accident. Hopefully we see him bounce back. There's talk he might come to Punchestown if that goes ahead. And they were kind of the two main best that I took out. Envoy Allen is 6-1 for the Marsh Chase. Again, I just want to wait for confirmation that that's where he definitely goes. But if he goes there and shows up healthy on the day, there's every possibility he could be odds on once again. So they'd be kind of the three you might look forward to. I don't know what a 5 or Trixie on them at day, but it might be worth chancing.
Okay, there we are then. There's our Cheltenham review, but don't go anywhere, as we're going to talk about the story which is engulfing not just racing but every industry at the moment.
So does an each-way bet mean that my horse has to do part of the race in reverse?
Everyone loves a newbie. That's why Paddy Power Games are giving all new customers 60 free spins on daily jackpot games. New Paddy Power Games customers only, 1 per customer. T's and C's apply. 18+. BeGambleAware.org.
Welcome back to this Monday podcast then, and as promised, we're going to talk about the coronavirus now. Very, very serious story. This global pandemic now taking over not just our sport but everything seemingly. And the latest is that British racing at some point by the end of this week will be taking place with no spectators. Ireland, they've closed all meetings until March 29. No one really knows where they stand at the moment, Bruce. What's your take on it? Because it seems to have just spiralled into something absolutely huge. First off, probably a good question to ask is, do you think that Cheltenham should have taken place in light of recent events?
I don't know, is the honest answer. I mean, it would be interesting to see what the infection rates from people who went to Cheltenham are against people who have been, rubbing shoulders with fewer people. But I just don't know enough about it. I think I'm only prepared to talk about this in sporting terms because, to me, any problems racing have out of this are minor by comparison to what's going on. And we're seeing, certain areas of Europe and elsewhere in the world where people are dying at frighteningly high numbers, and it's just awful. And I don't really want to start painting racing as having any great hardship in comparison to that. But against that, obviously, there are concerns because a lot of people earn a living and not necessarily a very lucrative living. And if racing didn't take place, then their livelihoods would be jeopardised, and that's obviously a real and genuine problem. So if we just talk about racing, I think the good news is that the racecourses, and particularly ARC, had a good look at this a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and made provisions for racing to take place without any spectators or limited number of spectators. I was speaking to Martin Crudis at Cheltenham, who runs ARC, and they very quickly established how many officials they need to have on the course. I think it was 26 or 27. One interesting element of it, Maddy, is that there's not going to be an on-course bookmaker, so we're going to be using an industry SP. And I think a lot of people are a little bit concerned about this. Now, to me, I don't really share those concerns. I've always found it slightly peculiar that we still take the prices from a small number of on-course bookmakers rather than what's going on in the much larger off-course bookmakers. Where you get a very authentic SP currently is that they're basically just tracking the exchange money and obviously a lot of money on the exchange. So it actually works quite well. But I don't think people should be too concerned because I think, the Racing Post certainly and other people would be all over this if the margins started going up or it looked like certain prices weren't truly reflective of what people are seeing on the live shows. Then I think, it would instantly become transparent. So I think industry SPs will work absolutely fine. I think it's really important for racing that the show does take place still because fewer and fewer other betting mediums are surviving this. One by one, they're shutting down. So if we can keep racing on the road, I think it will help turnover. It will keep the levy up. It will keep racing's income coming. And if we can prove that it's perfectly safe to run a meeting at, say, Southwell or wherever with just, a handful of people there, the fewest people there, they're not infecting one another, then I think hopefully that will keep things going. The problem we've got is the bigger meetings, obviously in the Grand National, Punchestown, and then, the Guineas isn't far away. And even the Derby and Royal Ascot now, they are all very much in doubt now. And that's, the real concern for the sport is just how long it's going to be before we can start getting back to normal. And there's certainly fears from a lot of people that it will be later rather than sooner. So I think we all have to accept that the world is in a very, very strange and in many ways utterly tragic situation. Racing is in a strange situation and things that we're used to are going out of the time being. So it's going to be very strange. It's going to be interesting to see how it transpires. Obviously, we're going to have to just hope that new infection numbers reach a peak and then start coming down. And in the meantime, hopefully we can keep the show on the road and there will still be racing and there'll still be something to bet on. Yeah, precisely. As you say, none of us are medical professionals and it's important to get things into perspective, as you say. Really tragic, obviously, the counts that are going around the world at the moment. But to put a more positive spin, if you like, on it, this could present a good opportunity for racing if it can go ahead, as you say, without sort of sacrificing much needed medical resources and things like that. Darren, I mean, Betfair, I believe they've got their market on whether Aintree is going to take place. I believe that's odds on to take place at the moment. What would your outlook on it be at this moment in time? Because it's constantly developing this.
Entries odds on not to go ahead. Maddy, it's 1-3 not to go ahead, and kind of a little bit better than 5-2 to go ahead. Yeah, look, I think to carry on your positive spin, I think if we can keep racing going ahead behind closed doors, it's a really good opportunity because people love sport. That's just the way people are. So we are as a species. We love sport. There's very little sport going on at the moment. So if we can kind of showcase racing, and if racing can still go on, and kind of, if people can use that as an alternative where they might watch football or whatever else, it's good to put racing in the shop window, provided it's safe to go ahead. I think safety is paramount here. You'd be hopeful that stuff like the Grand National can go ahead behind closed doors. I mean, it's our biggest day of the year, but I would be hopeful rather than confident. It's very testing times at the minute. And I wouldn't like to make any bold predictions because, as you say, things are changing by the minute.
Yeah, exactly that.
Darren, quick one from me to you. Sorry, Maddy. Have you seen turnover go up, since the weekend on racing?
Largely static at the moment, Bruce. I'd be in a better position to let you know this time next week once we've kind of had it, once it's had time to bed in. But from what I can see, it's largely static for the time being.
That's interesting. Okay, that's a story that is constantly developing, and I'm sure we'll cover it on next week's show as well. Let's take a break now, but stay with us because we're going to answer some of your questions.
Check out Paddy's Rewards Club. Simply place 5 bets of £10 or more across any sport in a week, and you'll get a free £10 bet then next week. T&Cs apply. 18+. BeGambleAware.org.
Welcome back to today's show, and we're going to run through some of your Cheltenham Festival questions. Now, first off from Kench, he's asking us to pick out a ride of the week. There were so many, weren't there? I mean, I think he suggested that Rex Dingle on Indefatigable in the very final race was one of them. That was a brilliant ride. Bruce, who do you think was best in the saddle last week?
Well, I suppose given the uncharacteristically strident comments by Willie Mullins after the Mares Hurdle, it was really interesting how that one panned out, wasn't it? Because he was really unhappy that I think Robbie Power let Rachel Blackmore through on the rail on Honeysuckle. Paul Townend, meanwhile, went wide there. So I just think that Team Mullins probably got it wrong. But at the time, I backed Honeysuckle. And when she kind of got caught on the rails in third, having seemingly looked like she could have cruised around the inside, I was a little bit frustrated. But then 20 strides later, she's got back up the inside. So I suppose that, and what I liked about Rachel Blackmore, after the last, they've jumped it. It's very, very close. She's given Honeysuckle one tap, and then it's hands and heels all the way. And I just thought that was a performance that showed her bravery to go around the inside and her balance and poise and patience and calm up the running. So I will say Rachel Blackmore on Honeysuckle.
I must admit, I backed Benny, as I'm sure a lot of people did. Do you think that if given a different ride, Benny could have won, or do you think that Honeysuckle would have just pulled out a bit more? Because she ballooned the last, didn't she? Benny was actually much slicker at the last, but she just kept on pulling it out, didn't she?
Yeah, no, I think Honeysuckle would have won. I mean, although obviously Willie was unhappy that she was allowed to slip up the inside, she did actually encounter a little bit of traffic at the start of that final turn. So you never know with these things. It was a great race anyway. It might have been slightly closer, but I'm fully prepared to believe Honeysuckle was better.
Thrilling race that, wasn't it? Just brings all the tactics and maybe team tactics, maybe not, all for different owners, as Willie said after the race. Darren, ride of the week for you?
I have 4 that I can't split, and Paul Townend is 3 of them. Brendan Powell on the conditional and the ultimate was absolutely phenomenal.
Why? What made that such a good ride?
He timed it to perfection, and he went up the inside of Kildysart, which, Daryl Jacob maybe shouldn't have let him come up his inside, but he timed it to absolute perfection. He got the horse jumping and he delivered him at the right time. And as someone who backed Kildysart at big prices, I think similar to yourself and a few others over in the RP office, it was sickening to watch, but such is life. Paul Townend then in the champion bumper on Fernie Hollow, I thought was magnificent. Like ball to steel. He maybe had gotten 1 or 2 of the rides, maybe wrong between Benny the Jew, etc. earlier on the week, but to give the horse the ride that he did, after the week he'd had, I think that was his first winner of the week as well. Like that showed, real mettle, and he again delivered to perfection to beat it. More fancied stablemate. Thought he was very good on Min as well. He got Min jumping. I thought that was one of the better rounds jumping all week. He pinged literally every single fence. And he cut the nose of St. Calvados just at the right time after jumping the last to sicken the horse a little bit to stop him from getting back up. And then lastly, I thought he was absolutely excellent in Albion Photo as well. again, he took it up sort of 4 out, 5 out maybe, which, maybe it was a very brave thing to do, because kind of the last thing you wanted your horse to be in front too soon in the Gold Cup and get beat because you'd be crucified. But he had the confidence in both himself and the horse to have him there. Again, the horse jumped brilliant by and large, because that's been a feature of him, that he isn't the greatest jumper, but I thought 90% of the fences he was really, really good at, and that's down to Paul as well. So thought Paul had an excellent week, but also special mention to Brendan Powell on the conditioner in the ultimate.
Okay, excellent. Just want to shoehorn a quick point in there. A lot of talk about this sort of Mullins and Elliott monopoly, and obviously Barry Geraghty and Paul Townend getting a lot of the winners. Bruce, what do you make of this? Do you think it's just the way it is? Is it bad for the sport if the same people are winning all the time, or do you just think the cream rises to the top?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing particularly new, is it? The only thing that left a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth was just the pathetic whinging about Irish handicap marks before the festival. I just thought it was, utterly nonsense. We all knew it at the time. And then when you see the Irish dominate the handicaps like they did, it just confirms it. So please, next year, accept the mark you're given. Don't cry about it, and then let the horses do their running.
I thought that the Pertemps is turning into quite an interesting race with the qualifying system there. Maybe that's something that's going to come under scrutiny soon. Anyway, let's move on. Alex Kerr is simply asking for a tracker horse for us. I'm going to give one. Why not? I thought Captain Guinness was running a really interesting race in the Supreme. Both him and Elixir Dane probably worth looking at next time, because they were just taken out of the contest through no fault of their own. I think maybe Captain Guinness could develop into an Arkle horse. He's got that speed. He's trained by Henry de Bromhead, and I thought he dealt with the occasion pretty well. He jumped very well prior to that point. So Captain Guinness for me. Bruce?
Well, I mean, one thing that we ought to remark on, have you ever seen a horse jump so exaggeratedly in one direction as Asterion Folonge? Absolutely. It was weird, wasn't it? I mean,
and he still finished
we knew
fourth,
he had
a
tendency to do that, but it was absolutely extraordinary. And I'll tell you another thing as well. We're talking about good rides. There was a couple of jockeys who would have known full well what the horse was doing, and yet were still presenting their horses to the right of him. I mean, it really didn't make any sense. But yeah, there was a not quite as big a schmozzle in the Coral Cup on Wednesday, but there were certainly a couple of horses down the field that were badly handicapped, badly hampered by a faller. One of them was a horse called Coco Beach, Coko Beach, trained by Gordon Elliott for Gigginstown. Ran on really well afterwards. He was on my radar beforehand because he was second in last year's Boodle, albeit it was a very weak Boodle. But I thought the way he ran on was really well. And I don't know, he just caught my eye as a horse who may well, before the end of this season, take out or certainly run well in a handicap at a very big price. So Coco Beach goes into my tracker.
Love it. That's a real dark horse, that. I'm not sure many would have picked that out. Darren, one tracker horse.
I'll give you two.
Excellent. Go for it.
Two both trained by William Mullins. First one is Canardier, formerly at Dermot McLaughlin's yard. He was running a big race in the Coral Cup, and he came down at the last. I think a little bit more time, he could improve again. If we want to keep on side, should Punchestown go ahead. And then the other one is a horse that most people will know belonging to William Mullins and JP McManus, called Blazer. He was quietly back just before the Brown Advisory Plate. He made a very bad mistake and was very badly hampered at the 8th fence and just could never get back into it. I'd say he's one to keep on side. He looked like, obviously, it was too early to know, but he'd come into it in decent form, having run well at Leopardstown before that. So I think there's a big pot in him again.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with you. He's got one of those handicaps in him, hasn't he, Blazer, if it all goes right. And our final question, or questions, is about Envoy Allen. One person was asking, would he have won the Champion Hurdle? Bruce, I don't think he would have done. What do you think?
I think both those mares would have. I think he might have, simply because more that I don't particularly think the Champion Hurdle form was great than I think Envoy Allen is sensational. But, you can't knock Envoy Allen. I mean, he's done it. He's got, the most incredible CV, and he won it with authority, if not, a particular sort of panache. So I think he may well have done. I think Darren would be more confident than I am that he would have won.
Yeah, just confirm that, Darren. You think he would have won, don't you?
I do, yeah. I think he won the Ballymore with relative ease, having looked briefly in trouble. And he didn't do a tap once he hit the front. I think he was valued for more than the winning distance. So, Yeah, I reckon he'd have won the Champion Hurdle and possibly the Ballymore in the same week. He was allowed to run them both.
Okay, just to confirm, I know we sort of touched on it earlier. Would you stick over hurdles or go chasing next season? We had a jury on this on our website after the race, what people would do with him. I think Robbie Wilder said he'd go Champion Hurdle and Andrew Wilshire said he'd go sort of chasing and go down the marsh route. I'd be inclined to agree with Andrew. I think, Bruce, you would as well?
If you go over jumps and it doesn't take to it, you've got the freedom to come back. If you go over jumps, you've got three possible targets, haven't you, as a novice? I mean, really, the race that, if you were sticking to hurdles, that he'd be good at is my 2.5 mile Grade 1 chase, but Grade 1 hurdle. But they still haven't invented that for some reason. They need to, they ought to, and even if it replaces the mares, that would be absolutely fine. So there's a multitude of options for Envoy, and he's one of just a large number of horses that I can't wait to see how his career develops from here.
Yeah, I could not see him winning an Arkle. That is the one that I'm just not sure he would. He looked like he struggled for a bit of toe momentarily in the Ballymore, and I just think that Arkle, you need to be so quick and razor sharp, and I think as much as he's got that ability, he'd be better suited to something over a bit further. Darren, presumably you think he could win whichever race they chose to put him in?
Yeah, as I said, whatever race, doesn't really matter. I think he's a machine. I take your point that he looked briefly tapped for toe, but like the speed which he closed that 5 lengths between himself and the big break or the getaway, whichever one it was absolutely frightening. Like as in, it was a matter of stride. He was gone from 4 lengths behind to 3 lengths clear. This is a weapon of a thing. I think he could win whatever they train him for.
Bodes very well for the future, doesn't it? Can't wait for what National Hunt Racing has in store in the coming months. Fingers crossed it gets to go ahead. Now, before we leave you, we've got a present. Darren's got a horse for you to follow this week. Reveal all, Darren.
It's 3 o'clock in Down Royal tomorrow. It's a horse running called Fag on Ballot for Arthur Moore. Won a bumper here in good style last year, and things haven't quite gone to plan over sticks as yet, but I think tomorrow might be the day. Hers debut behind Mount Ida earlier on the year was promising, and she's had excuses since. Twice at Cork hasn't run up to her level. I think she's had excuses. Stepped up here to 2.5 miles around the track that she won her bumper at. Back to soccer. I think tomorrow might be the day, and she should be a decent price while she's at it as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much, Darren. That's all we've got time for on today's show. As things stand, Friday and the tipping podcast will go ahead as planned. Stay healthy, everyone, and let us know your highlights from the Cheltenham Festival in the comments section. And I'll see you next week.
I'm Jose Mourinho. I know a thing or two about being special. Getting a road named after you in your hometown? Special. Winning the daily jackpot on Paddy Power Games? Not special.
Understood, Jose. Yes, someone wins an average £40,000 jackpot every single day. So if you win, don't think you're special. Daily Jackpots by Paddy Power Games. Jackpots must be awarded by 11 p.m. and vary from day to day. Jackpot is shared with other operators. Available on selected games. T's and C's at paddypower.com. 18+ BeGambleAware.org.